Brings us to item number 4, Senate Bill 1662. Been looking forward to this because Senator Dickerson is going to give us a thorough and in-depth explanation of blockchain.
Yeah, thank you.
Isn't that correct, Senator Dickerson?
Superficial, somewhat vague and confused, I think actually more
Superficial,
accurate.
vague, and confused. Okay, well, that's more or less what I said.
Sure, thank you.
Senator Dickerson, you are recognized on Senate Bill 1662.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. As many of you all are aware, blockchain is sort of the rage now. It's sort of a technological cryptography answer that's going to, I think, help propel a lot of what we do online. And one of the things we'd like to do is make Tennessee a favorable environment for entities, companies that use blockchain as part of their technology. This bill would actually codify that to an extent. I do have two witnesses who would like to come up and give some brief testimony. They could probably give you some, I would say, context and clarification. I can either present the bill to you now or wait till after they speak at the discretion of the chairman.
Perhaps we get a brief explanation of blockchain and what it is. It is a new concept, new technology, and before we bring the bill up,
Sure.
and that way we'll have it in proper context. And gentlemen, I'm going to have to ask you to be brief. We have a very busy calendar today, but if you could, and this may be difficult, in 5 minutes, give us your best effort to explain what blockchain is. And please make sure your microphone is on. There should be a bright red light that comes on. And if you'll state your name and who you're with for the record, please, and you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senators. Pleasure to be here today. My name is John Wagster. I'm representing the Tennessee Blockchain Alliance and also my law firm of Frost Brown Todd. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the committee today. In my lifetime, and it's comparable in age to a number of you at the podiums here, we've witnessed a number of dramatic technological changes, starting with the advent of the personal computer in the 80s, going to the creation of the internet in the 90s, and in the 2000s we started with cloud storage and the era of big data and transformation. And who would have thought in the mid-1990s when we first sent that email and sent it across the country to somebody who got it instantaneously, my only thought was, wow, this is really going to put the fax machine out of business. But we had no idea that it was going to totally revolutionize our society and change just about every aspect of it, the way we shop, the way we buy, the way we commute, everything. And I believe that's where we are now with blockchain technology. It's relatively new. We're at the dawn of the technology. We're just figuring it out. To the extent when you log onto a computer, you use an internet protocol, a TCP. That's how you access the internet. Not many of us really know what that means. We just know that we access the internet. We put www and it works. We're just now in the formational stages of the use of blockchain technology. And bills like the one that Senator Dickerson is offering today are ones to put that on the map and to put Tennessee at the forefront of the movement to do so. We have a strong hub of blockchain activity in Tennessee and in Nashville in particular. There are dozens of organizations who are active in the technology, and we are among them. I'd like to introduce also Giles Ward, who's with Hashed Health, a premier healthcare company that works in blockchain technology, and let him make a few comments as well.
Okay, you're right. And introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senators. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. My name is Giles Ward. I work for Hashed Health. We're a Nashville-based healthcare technology company. We are focused on building understanding and momentum at the intersection of healthcare and this new technology called blockchain. We've grown in the last year and a bit from 4 employees to 12 employees, and we're riding this wave of progress in this space. We also co-host the world's largest healthcare blockchain conference held each fall here in Nashville. So we'll have our 3rd annual this October, bringing more than 800 people from around the globe to our city.
Great. And I don't mean to cut you off, but explain what blockchain is.
I'll jump to that.
The discussion about how wonderful blockchain is. Give us a summation of what blockchain is, please.
Okay, so I'll start with saying we're here today talking blockchain, and blockchain is a data structure. Blockchain owes its origin to the digital currency Bitcoin and is the data structure that makes that global decentralized currency possible. But the technology has evolved to stand on its own. I believe that Bitcoin and digital currencies are important and that they'll find a place in our world, but I also believe that Bitcoin's lasting legacy will be this blockchain. In a copy and paste digital world, the blockchain's innovation is certain, transparent, and verifiable digital uniqueness. Think of a blockchain as a transparent, shared and secure ledger of time-stamped transactions. Each transaction is cryptographically connected to every previous transaction and visibly recorded for every participant of the network to see. I'm happy to answer any questions, but want to reiterate that blockchain as a technology is important. Blockchain will change the way the world interacts with data, the way the internet changed the way we communicate. There's a great deal of activity in this space, and much of that activity is happening in and looking at Tennessee. So,
Vice Chairman Green.
So again, trying to get my head around what blockchain is. The iCloud or the cloud can store a file on a server, but blockchain would be like one file spread across all the servers, like let's say one Microsoft spreadsheet that's spread over the globe on multiple different systems, saved pieces of that are all linked together to form one chain. Is that kind of, is my understanding correct?
It is correct, sir. Perhaps another example is when you, if you think of a piece of computer software, traditional software, it's hosted on a computer that's either on your PC or in your office, and that computer receives commands and takes commands and does what the software is supposed to do. Blockchain-based software isn't hosted on one machine. It's hosted on a distributed network, and that by distributed network we mean every user to that system has access to the network in a different way and plays a particular role in the generation of power through that network, the generation of the software.
Thanks.
if every party to a transaction were looking at the same copy of the ledger or the same record of that transaction, it eliminates any need for argument or reconciliation. It's basically a shared data set that all parties interact with, rather than everyone having their own set of data that they reconcile through whatever mechanism that is traditionally.
Okay, Chairman Watson?
Last night I had a piece of legislation on the floor having to do with the shared economy, and one of the reasons that we were putting the legislation, that we were trying to put it into the code or into the law, was there's a lack of clarity about exactly what the definitions are between, like in this particular instance, an employer and employee relationship. My question to you and for the sponsor to contemplate is, what is the problem in the current law that requires us to put this into the code? Do those who are using blockchain, are they running into ambiguity? Are they running into definitional problems that the current law just simply doesn't address? One of the things we have to be careful of as the legislature is that we just don't put things into code because we want to put them into code. There has to be a rational basis for doing that. So what's the rational basis for blockchain needing to be in the code under a new section?
So thank you for the question. If we think back, you probably recall a Digital Signature Act some years ago that sort of accounted for the fact that technology had surpassed the traditional pen and ink signing of contracts. And it was routine for individuals to sign those contracts with electronic stamps. And eventually Congress passed a law that made that recognized the electronic signatures were valid signatures. The legislation that Senator Dickinson is introduced would do essentially something similar to that for blockchain technology. So right now, a smart contract, as defined in the bill, is really an executable piece of code. And it's a code that is a series of if-then statements that are locked into software. So if certain things happen, that contract will automatically execute. And at some point in the future, if states or the federal government doesn't pass a law like this, somebody, when they get upside down in a contract, or they find something isn't going their way and they're trying to find a way to bust that contract, they're going to say, well, is this really a contract? Is there really offer, acceptance, and consideration in this software code? And is that even possible? So this legislation, in a clever way, says that just because a contract includes a piece of blockchain technology called a smart contract, that the inclusion of that blockchain technology cannot render the contract void.
You've piqued my interest a little bit because you use a word that we're a little bit nervous about when we hear, and that you said in a clever way, which tends to lend one to think that what they're seeing may not be what they're getting. So are there currently cases before any courts across the United States in which someone is challenging the contractual authenticity of a blockchain contract as you have described?
There are not yet that I'm aware of. I'd like to explain what I meant by the use of clever. There are several ways to achieve what this legislation does. One way would be to say that contracts that use blockchain technology are legal in the state of Tennessee. That's a really big statement because we have no idea what the future of those contracts may be, given we're just at the cusp of this technology. Another way, in a clever and smart way, and what I meant by that reference, clever, is to move that concept in the negative and say contracts cannot be deemed illegal just because they include this technology. So I think the Senator has done a wise thing, and his House counterpart, in phrasing it this way, because they're saying you can't render a contract inapplicable just because it contains this technology.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Yeager.
We were just discussing this issue at the country store in my district. I understand this blockchain is really a digital ledger that you're looking to develop networks so you can have a universal access to this. I mean, I know I've read a little bit that what IBM has done on this, but and I really agree with Chairman Watson. What at this point, why is state action necessary when you've got, different companies working on this digital ledger, and that you're trying to network? Why is state action necessary? And I know you answered this question, but maybe it's just me. I didn't understand it. But help me. Why is state action necessary?
Well, just to the first part, there are several kinds of blockchains, but some are public and some are private. Most of the ones in healthcare and in banking are private permission blockchains, so the participants interacting on that ledger are invited to that space. So a series of banks could interact on the same ledger rather than transferring between them through a third party or through some reconciliation process. But as for why is this necessary, blockchain is a global movement.
Yes.
Like it is like it's Singapore, it's Shanghai, it's Switzerland, it's a lot of the Caribbean islands, and companies are looking for places to set up. And certainty, regulatory certainty is what they are seeking in some of these jurisdictions. And so we, as advocates for this technology, look at Switzerland and Singapore and Grenada getting all of these companies setting up shop, and we see, why not Tennessee? I don't know that this legislation specifically does that, but it's a huge signal to this global community for why Tennessee is and should be a player.
Chairman, can I ask one more question? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know it's getting late. So is your answer suggesting that this bill would deregulate blockchain in Tennessee?
No, sir, not at all.
Okay.
The opposite. I believe what Giles means by regulatory framework is it allows regulatory certainty. In my legal practice, I've helped set up dozens of companies who are establishing blockchain presence of some sort. And because the technology is new, people don't really know how it's going to be regulated. Most people agree that there's some aspects of this technology that will need some sort of government oversight. But what Giles is saying, and I agree with him, is that putting Tennessee on the map is a place where we recognize that blockchain technology is on the forefront of innovation, and we want to be a part of it. And we're recognizing blockchain-based contracts in state law is a significant step to companies, international and domestic. They're looking for places to establish business.
So this is really pretty significant, could be.
We believe so, yes, sir.
And for that reason, Mr. Chairman, if I may, and I may be the only one that's just not catching all of this, but would the sponsor consider rolling this to give us a chance, our attorney, to look at this issue and tell us a little bit about it? The implications? I mean, I'm sorry.
Okay,
I'm sorry,
there we
Mr.
go.
Chairman.
Well, certainly, that'd be up to the sponsor. Let me remind members, we're not even on the bill at this point.
Thank you. You're right.
Yeah, we're getting a background, I guess, presentation on blockchain and
Okay.
what blockchain is. So at the appropriate time, let's have Senator Dickerson explain the bill and what the bill does, and then we can contemplate moving forward or deferring action, perhaps at that time. I have Chairman Gresham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is all very fascinating and very exciting at the same time. I've been reading the handout, and let me just take you through this one little paragraph. And it says that many blockchains feature a combination of certain characteristics, one of which is they call distributed, in which data is shared across multiple network participants of the network. So, all of them are of equal value, and there's no central authority, so it makes the network very resilient to failures and attacks. Does resilient mean vulnerable? Or what does resilient mean?
Resilient means the opposite of vulnerable. So
Secure.
it is very secure, yes. Blockchain technology itself is very secure, and I believe it's fair to say that the technology itself has never been hacked. Doesn't mean it won't be, but it's never been hacked. We read in the paper a lot of instances of digital currency, cryptocurrency, and Bitcoin hacks. That's not blockchain technology that's being hacked. Those are the services developing and around it, and the exchanges around that are handling it. The technology itself has not yet been hacked. So it is very secure.
Thank you.
Okay, members, if there's no objection, let's go, gentlemen, if you will stay there, let's go back into session, and let's have Senator Dickerson explain the bill. We'll get the bill properly before us, and then there will probably be additional questions about the bill, and we can certainly have our guests chime in if they would like to do so. So we're back in session. Senator Dickerson, you're recognized to explain Senate Bill 1662.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. And just to clarify some of the confusion I think Chairman Watson had when our witness said that it was a clever bill and it was associated with me, I think that confused you a little bit because you're not expecting that coming from me. So just suffice to say, this bill was not of my doing. I'm simply the conduit, and I'm proud to be. So, members of the committee, I would actually have you refer to Section 4710-202, subsection C. And I think that sort of gets to the gist of what this bill does. And there's a statement in there that says, no contract relating to a transaction shall be denied legal effect, validity, or enforceability solely because that contract contains a smart contract term. So essentially what we're doing is saying if you would like to do business in this highly technical area, whether it's in healthcare, which I think Tennessee is the hub, sort of the Silicon Valley of healthcare, or in any other venue, you cannot escape the contract you have signed simply because it is based upon or involved with this technology. And so what I see this bill is doing is affirmatively welcoming entrepreneurs, technological entrepreneurs, healthcare entrepreneurs, it's beyond the scope of my imagination what this might be applied to, but welcoming them to Tennessee. And I think this gives our state an affirmative competitive advantage over the other 49 states in welcoming these entrepreneurs to our state by stating affirmatively, if you use this technology, it is legally binding within the state.
And if
and I would defer to our witnesses to say if I may have gone way off the rails with that, but that's what I see this bill as accomplishing.
Understood. I will move the bill to get it properly before us. We have a second, so we are now officially on the bill. And Chairman Yeager, I'd like to chime in. It is a significant step in that heretofore blockchain or blockchain technology has never been acknowledged or recognized in the code because it's new technology. But it is being used in contracts and expect to have more of that. I like the definition or the explanation that this doesn't force blockchain technology on anyone, But if two parties willingly enter into a contractual agreement where they both agree to utilize blockchain technology, then they cannot later assert that, well, there's no recognition of blockchain technology in the code, therefore that's grounds for me getting out of the contract. That's an accurate statement. So it's a significant step in that we're recognizing blockchain technology in the code, but it's already being used. It's being used right now in the economy. So this just says if you enter into a contract utilizing blockchain technology, then you have to stick by it because you understood that going into the contract. So while blockchain technology is a significant advancement, I really view this as a fairly small step forward, but it is significant in the fact that it does send a message to companies who are interested in this across the world that Tennessee is on the forefront of understanding and recognizing this. So that's...
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please,
Thank you
Chairman
very
Yeager.
much. You've certainly very succinctly explained it to me. I knew a little bit about blockchain, and I think what we're saying is we're just recognizing this concept, and we're not going. And it would not allow. It removes the defense in a breach of contract that blockchain was not recognized in Tennessee. That's all it does. Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The chairman's words have brought comfort.
As they always do.
That's right.
Glad to hear that,
I've
Mr.
gotta
Chairman.
be alive.
I know just enough about it to be dangerous. I have Chairman Watson.
Yeah, well, I'm not quite as comforted. I think it is. I think there's. I need a little time to process. I think there's more to this legislation than just acknowledging blockchain definitionally in the code. Also found it interesting that the countries that were cited by the witnesses are typically where people put accounts offshore. And then the legal questions of if information is shared by all these parties, then what is in a legal environment or where someone were sued, what information is available to whom? How is that information disseminated amongst the parties engaged in a legal conflict? And I love this kind of legislation because, like the piece I had last night, although mine was to clarify existing law, I mean, we are trying to adapt to an ever-changing system. But I think this does a little bit more than just define blockchain in the code, and I would like, if the sponsor is willing, I want to be able to vote for this, but I would like a little bit more time just to process and talk to some of my technology people that do legal work back home about what actually is being promulgated, particularly before we put it into code when there's no case study, no case history that these contracts have been challenged legally by your testimony. And I assume that since you represent the Chamber of Digital Commerce, that's a national organization, and I would assume that the other 49 states have a piece of legislation sitting before them as well, and I doubt that Tennessee will be unique because this is actually interstate commerce, which will eventually, I suspect, require, under the Commerce Clause, probably the United States Congress to take action. So I just think I want to be for this. I just need a little bit more time to process it, Mr. Chairman. Now, the sponsor does not have to accept my request, but my request is to give me a week to look at this a little more thoroughly.
Senator Dickerson.
I would defer to the request of Chairman Watson. I would ask only if there are any more questions for our witnesses, since they've taken time out of the day, to go ahead and pepper them with questions for the next few moments, because they may or may not be able to come back next week for the follow-up. But I would defer to his request and the will of the committee.
How much time did you ask for, Chairman Watson? 1 week? Okay. Any other questions for our witnesses? Okay, Senator Nicely.
What would your detractors say if they were here? You've got to have somebody fighting against you. Who would be against you, and what would their argument?
I'm not aware of people specifically opposing the bill. A number of individuals have expressed concern, like Senator Watson, that they're just not sure what the bill does. We had a group, I am a member of the National Digital Alliance, but I'm not speaking on their behalf today. I'm speaking on behalf of the Tennessee Blockchain Alliance. And our members have discussed this. Initially, some members had concerns. They said, why do we need to do this? But after we met and we received input from all of our members, we came to consensus, unanimous consensus, that this is a good bill because it puts Tennessee on the map. Senator Watson's correct that there are several other states that have already considered similar legislation and passed it. Other states, I'm sure, have other bills in the hopper. A lot of states have bills significantly more robust than this one. So this is about as modest a step as we can take and still try and put Tennessee on the map in this technological sphere.
One follow-up on that. These other states that you said have done more, you say this is a baby step. Which state has done the most, and what have they done on top of what you're asking for here?
States of Illinois and Delaware have been the most active. Delaware has enacted legislation that allows its entire corporate registry to be centered on blockchain technology. And as you know, many people consider the state of Delaware to be the sort of the de facto state where corporations register because they have such robust case law. So it's significant that they have authorized the corporate registry to be based in blockchain technology, among many other things.
Okay, members, if there's nothing further, we'll move Senate Bill 1662 to next week's calendar. And gentlemen, thank you for being here with us today. We appreciate your testimony.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman and members.